Hi Year 6, good morning, happy Wednesday. I'm making a video today to help explain some of your topic learning for the week. So you've done quite a bit of science focus so far. We've had a focus on the plants and trying to group and classify those. So now we're going to move into geography and see how some of the physical aspects of Earth make up the rainforest. So not just the species that are living inside of it, but everything else that goes alongside it. It could be looking at the weather, it could be looking at rivers, mountains, temperatures, all of those things. So today you've got your first task, and it's going to be to try and compare two different rainforests. The one that we probably know the most is the Amazon, the tropical rainforest, but there are also temperate rainforests as well, and there's a big difference between the two. So that's going to be your job for today, to try and compare the two of those. And alongside that, I've given you some vocabulary to have a look at, which is some really key geography terminology, words that will help you describe those rainforests from a geography perspective. So I've put together a little video, a little PowerPoint that I'm going to put on here in a minute, and I'll explain some of those words to you in the context of rainforests, so hopefully it will make your job a little bit easier for the rest of the week. There is a video attached to the learning today that is not done by me. It's another YouTube clip that's got some really good facts on there about temperate and tropical rainforests. So have a watch of that too, and it should help you out as well. Have fun, enjoy, and hope to see you soon. Bye everyone. 6. So here's the explanation video to go alongside some of the geography today. So it's just going to look at what geography is in general. We're going to have a reminder and think about what that word geography means and how it links to rainforests. And then we're going to have a look at some of the key vocabulary that I've sent out as part of a task today, but it's also going to help you with your learning, not just today, but for the rest of this week when we talk about geography. So what is geography? Now here's the definition, the standard definition, if you like. So geography is a noun, and it is the study of the physical features of the Earth and its atmosphere, and of human activity as it affects and is affected by these, including the distribution of populations, of resources, and political and economic activities. Now you're probably thinking, what does all that jargon mean? Well, basically, in a nutshell, this picture tries to help explain it. The physical features of Earth, the physical geographies, are the things that make up our planet, such as continents, countries, as you can see here, little green parts, the oceans, the volcanoes, the rivers, the mountains, the forests. It also will talk about the physical features as being some of the landmarks. So any key buildings or bridges or landmarks that you might find, like the Eiffel Tower and some of these places. We've also got the pyramids of Egypt. That would be a key landmark, a physical feature. And then we've also got the, if you're looking at the clouds around it, the climate is another thing that would be coming under the physical features that make up our Earth, the things that make up our Earth. So that's all the physical part. Now the second part of that definition is talking about human activity and how it affects these. And it gave an example like the populations, for example. So if you think about a continent, we look at this one in particular here with all these big high-rise buildings, the population, the amount of people living on this continent is probably going to be huge compared to if we look at this one here that has a bit of the bridge, it's got a bit of a building, but it looks like it's got quite a lot of forest area. Now the population of people, the amount of people that are living in that place will affect the Earth massively because of the buildings, because of the pollution, because of the way that humans are using that part of the Earth. So geography is a mixture of the two. It looks at the Earth and thinks of the naturally occurring things that are there already, the continents, the countries, the volcanoes, but then also the way that humans have affected that Earth and those places as well. So today your first task was to have a look at the meaning of some of the vocabulary that I've listed here. And hopefully I'm going to put some pictures together that will help explain some of those words to you a little bit easier. So first of all, here's a picture or a map of the Earth. Now we know that the Earth is a sphere shape, but when we look at the maps, they try and cut it in half so we can flatten it out and we can look at the whole Earth, unless we're looking at a globe, for example, like that blow-up one we've got in our classroom. So if we look at the first thing that you can see, it's the continents. There are the 7 continents on the map. The arrow is pointing to one of those continents, North America. Now, if you can remember, a continent is made up of lots of different countries. So a continent is a group of countries. So, for example, Europe has got England and the United Kingdom within it, but then we've also got France, Spain, Germany, Italy, Finland, Sweden, and so on. Okay, so the continent is the group of countries, and those continents completely differ to one another. So if we think about the continent Antarctica, we know that that is an extremely cold place. The temperatures get much lower than sub-zero. We know that the climate there is full of snow, and it can be a very dry place as well. Whereas if we compare that to Asia, for example, especially the bottom part of Asia here, this is a much hotter climate, comparing it to Antarctica. They have a lot more sunlight. They might have more rainfall, and they might not see much snow. So these continents completely differ to one another based on their position on the Earth. So the way that they are different, the reason that they are different is because they are in different places on the Earth, okay? So they're your continents. Now we get to countries. Now remember, the countries make up the continents. So countries either can be landlocked, meaning that they've got other countries surrounding it, and not an ocean, or some countries can have ocean around them. So if you think England, England has got lots of beaches and it's got some ocean around it here, but it is also joined, part of England is joined onto Scotland. So there are a few little cities in England that you won't be able to have the beach next to it, for example. Okay. Then we've obviously got the oceans. Now, the way that we think about the positioning on Earth is we have the equator. Now, the equator, as you can see here, if you follow my arrow, is this invisible line that goes right around the Earth here. And the equator is the hottest part on the Earth. So any countries that sit on or close to the equator are going to be very, very hot countries. Their temperatures are very hot, and they will remain hot for the majority of the year because they are close to this equator. So as you can see, these countries here that sit on it are going to have warm temperatures for the majority of the year round. Now remember, Australia had that horrible problem with some of their forest fires, and it was devastating. Now that's because their country was so hot and dry, they didn't have any rainfall, and the heat was so bad, some of their forests ended up catching fire. They had forest fires, and they are that close to the equator that their temperatures in that country can get to that high, whereas you wouldn't find that happening, or it would be much less likely to happen in England, in our country, because we don't have temperatures that reach that high and a dry climate for so long to allow that to take place. It would be very unlikely. So the equator is the line that goes kind of around the Earth, the hottest part, and we can use that to help position the countries, the continents, the oceans, and everything else. So anything that sits above that equator, anything that sits north of the equator, is called the northern hemisphere. So as you can see, the majority of Asia, the continent Asia, is in the northern hemisphere, but these little cluster of countries and islands are not. So try and have a guess at what you think anything below the equator would be. South of the equator, it's called the southern hemisphere. So anything above or north of the equator is in the northern hemisphere of Earth, and anything below the equator is in the southern hemisphere of Earth. So you can see Australia, the country, New Zealand, all the islands, and the continent Australia is within the southern hemisphere. Antarctica is within the southern hemisphere because it is south of that equator line. So that helps us position things on Earth. So there are a few other ways that we can look at the positions of Earth, and there are two other lines, the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. So they help us position other things on Earth, so not just looking at the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere, but splitting the Earth into smaller sections to help us place things and look at the distance. So it says here that the Tropic of Capricorn and the Tropic of Cancer are both lines that run horizontally along the Earth, and they're parallel to the equator. So remember that parallel means that the two lines are an equal distance away from each other, and they will never meet, they will never touch, they'll remain that distance away from each other. They are also used to help measure the distance on Earth. So as well as looking at the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn, and having a look at what countries fall within those zones, we use the latitudes to help us, which you can see here. So instead of just having three lines that we had before, the equator would go right through the centre here, we now can talk about latitude. So to help us locate places, the lines of latitude are used, and you can see here that it says to find out how far north being up, or south being down, how far north or south of places, the latitude lines are used, and they run parallel to the equator. So if you remember, the equator line goes right through here, then lines of latitude will go all the way along, and we can work out how far north something is. It might be positioned on this latitude line here, or how far south something is on this latitude line there. Okay, now the other two directions that we haven't got yet are east, anything over this way, or west, anything over this way. And instead of those lines running parallel to the equator, they are vertical lines, and they're called longitude. So they run from the top to the bottom of the Earth. So they can help us know if it's the top to the bottom and it's very far east, or if it's a longitude line that's very far west. Okay, so we've got the equator, the northern and southern hemisphere, the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn, and latitude and longitude that all help us locate things and have a look at the distance between them on the Earth. Okay, now they're really important to consider when you are trying to place a rainforest in particular, because the rainforests differ from one another, as you'll find out later when you do the activity comparing a temperate rainforest to a tropical rainforest. Now you can imagine the tropical rainforest will fall within the tropics here. And so looking at their position on Earth and comparing that to a temperate rainforest that might be perhaps positioned in the mid-latitude section, understanding their position on Earth will help understand why they are so different. Because anything within the tropics here, you can see, is very wet, but can be very dry, and very hot because it's close to the equator. Anything within the mid-latitudes here gets summer, autumn, winter and spring. They will have varying weather, and so that will explain why some of the temperate rainforests have got differences to the tropical rainforest. So all of those positioning words that we've just learned will really help you understand why those rainforests are different to one another. Okay, so then we come on to this word biome, which is a funny word. It's a noun. We haven't heard the word biome before, and it means a large naturally occurring community of flora and fauna occupying a major habitat, for example, a forest or a tundra. So you're probably thinking again, Miss, what on earth does that mean? So let's break that down a little bit. Let's first understand what is flora and fauna. Now, flora, you might have been able to take a guess, it's something to do with flowers. So flora is the plant life that occurs in a particular region or time. So if we think about the plant life in the Amazon rainforest that we looked at last week, you know that that plant life is very, very different compared to the plant life that we see in our gardens or in our forests. And that's all due to the climate, the temperature, and their positioning on the earth. The fauna refers to the animal life of a particular region or time. So a biome is thinking about that community of plants and animals that occupy, that live in a big major habitat. So for example, when we think about the Amazon rainforest, the biome of the Amazon rainforest, what plant life and animals, what flora and fauna occupy that place, and how is that different to another biome, a temperate rainforest, or the Arctic, for example, that has completely different flora and fauna. And then we can use that location knowledge to understand why the differences occur. So the final thing is thinking about the climate. And the climate is basically talking about how hot or cold the temperatures get in that region, how wet it might be due to rainfall, how windy it can get, or on the opposite scale, actually how dry it can get. If you think about deserts that hardly have any rainfall, they have a completely different climate to the weather patterns that rainforests have, for example. So why does all of this matter? Well, today your task is to compare two rainforests, and you are going to compare a temperate rainforest to a tropical rainforest so we can understand the key differences between the two. And on your task today, you had a YouTube video, a link to a YouTube video, not made by me, and this is a clip from it here, a still, so you can understand what I'm talking about. And it's a quick 3-minute introduction to the differences between those rainforests. It's really helpful. So I'd go and have a look at that, either after you've had a look at this video, or maybe partway through your research, so you can get a bit more information, a few more ideas to support your learning. So we've got a final picture of a map to have a look at here. And you'll notice that this one is slightly different. I want you to have a quick look before I tell you. I wonder what is different about this map and the positioning of the countries and continents compared to the others. Okay, so normally the edge of our maps of Earth that we look at is here, and we get Australia and New Zealand right at the edge. And on the other side, we have North America and South America. But on this map, North America and South America are over here instead. Doesn't matter, because we can still see all the countries and continents. And what's really important is looking at those really pale green parts and the pink parts. So the pale green, as you can see on the key, are areas of tropical rainforests. You can see there's quite a lot, especially here in South America. And then the pink areas, which are a lot trickier to find, are temperate rainforests. So you can see where my mouse is pointing to. Okay, so your task for today is to research a temperate rainforest and a tropical rainforest and work out what is the same and what is different about those places, and using some of that knowledge of the positioning of them on Earth, whether they're in the northern or southern hemisphere, close to the equator, and using that knowledge to help you understand why they are different. Why is that temperate rainforest different to a tropical rainforest? Why is the plant life the same or different? Why are the animals the same or different? So here's a quick just a quick recap on what a temperate rainforest is. So they occur, they're forests in the temperate zones, which was that mid-latitude range where they had the 4 seasons. It was above or below that tropical region which sat in the equator. So you can imagine that the temperatures in these temperate rainforests do not reach the temperatures of the tropical. So that could be a difference already. But they do receive a heavy rainfall, as we know tropical rainforests do, like the Amazon. So that could be a similarity between them. Here's a picture of a temperate rainforest. You can see what animal lives there. You wouldn't imagine that animal living in a warm climate within a tropical rainforest. So that's another difference. So here's one that I found. The Tongass National Forest is a large swath of temperate rainforest located in southeast Alaska. I wonder if you know where Alaska is. It's the largest national forest in the United States and the largest remaining temperate rainforest in the world. It's here that you can find some of the last old growth temperate rainforest on the continent. Okay, now have that in mind, because now we're going to have a quick look at what a tropical rainforest is. It's a hot, moist biome found near the Earth's equator. So its location is completely different to the mid-latitudes. As the world's largest tropical rainforests are found in South America, Africa, and Southeast Asia, as you can see on the map. The tropical rainforests receive from 60 to 160 inches of precipitation. That's just the rainfall, and it's fairly evenly distributed throughout the year. So I wonder if the temperate rainforest received a similar amount of rainfall or whether they are different. Here's a picture of a tropical rainforest. And you could have a look and you can see that the plant life looks similar from afar, but I wonder if it is actually the same or if it is different because of where it's located on the Earth.